All right. Any other questions about our lab assignments? Okay. Hearing none. All right. So what did you all think of the two articles before I ask like these formal questions? Don't all jump at once.
I like the first one. I thought what was it called? The innovative leadership approaches.
Mm-hmm.
It was interesting. I took like the notes on like the four different approaches, but he did have a lot of like kind of, I guess like personal, not personal, but like he was like talking about how his connections, and I don't think we have as much context for like the author and like what his connections were, but I thought his points were good.
Okay. Other kind of insights before I ask these questions?
I found the second one, the dual purpose playbook, more influential, especially when a lot of organizations are doing strategic planning. The goals, the how to do key performance indicators, all that is so important. I think a lot of organizations forget once you create a strategic plan to heavily go by it. And I remember, I think you and I were talking at one point, and you said that every maybe board meeting or meetings that you attended, you brought your plan with you to make sure you were going by what you said you wanted to do. And I've also found that very important.
Yeah. It's so to give a little context of the dual purpose one, and I don't have necessarily a favorite between the two, but and I just realized I copied the questions not to everybody, just so that you all have the questions instead of having to go over to Moodle. But a little context on the dual purpose. So some of the articles that I will have for this course and upload will be from a variety of sources. So the leadership one, the innovative leadership approaches, that actually came from which is funny, they say peer reviewed, but if you look at like the actual journal itself, it's pretty I'm going to put this politely, it's very bloggish, and to me that doesn't seem like a peer reviewed journal, but at the same time we change. So maybe the definition of peer review needs to also change with the times. But so a journal that is part of like the overall International Leadership Association, just as a publication that they link to. So a very different perspective than say Harvard Business Review, which is what that dual purpose came from. So several that I will post for this course will come from more of a business perspective. And so sometimes when you're reading these, you also have to think about the context that you find yourself in. A lot of us are not going to be working in multi-billion-dollar corporations and thinking about a double or triple bottom line. And we're working more in community development. We're working in kind of grassroots level change. That doesn't mean, however, the concept of, say, a dual purpose isn't lost on us. And implementing, say, more so the overall idea and trying to make change while also, making money. So I think that's one of the, since most of us work sort of in a community or a nonprofit context, where we're serving people in some way, shape, or form, or wanting to, if we're not currently working in that kind of situation, we, regardless of the context, there is like the need to make money, right? We have to have money, dollars, whatever kind of currency you're working in, we have to have money to do that work. And so when we think about dual purpose from a corporate perspective, they're wanting to do well while they make money. Whereas from a community perspective, we're fulfilling our mission while raising the dollars we need or the money we need to carry out that work. So I hope that's clear as mud. Like the context at least helps when thinking about dual purpose, because we're already doing a little bit of that purpose, right? We're trying to already in the work we're doing improve our community and um, make them better from the bottom up, right? But when we are thinking about change, this is a little different, right? So I know some people might have read that dual purpose and be like, well, I don't work in a corporation. I don't work for a business. I don't work for a small business. So just keeping the concept in mind, regardless of the context. So we'll have several business type articles where the concepts can be applicable. Like I'm giving a presentation today to school foundations, and we're talking about converting sales funnels and content marketing into fundraising and how you can create fundraising funnels. And that concept is going to ruffle feathers. People are not going to like the idea of sending like 5 emails in a single sequence to potential donors. That's a concept that is different in perspective to what most people have been doing fundraising wise. So I challenge you to look at just the underlying concepts of these articles to see how they might be used, as opposed to, well, this is only a business perspective. And Gunjan, thank you for mentioning that. Makes you think of where your organization stands, where improvements can be made, I hope, was some of the takeaway as well. So the first question, when we say from the playbook article, doing good by your community. So just that phrase unto itself, not kind of outside the context of the article. What does that mean to you when you say doing good by your community?
Hi, Erika.
Hey, Herman.
I would like to make some comments. Maybe a question. I was reading these 2 articles about the leadership approaches, and fortunately, in my country, we don't have a warfare and social violence, but we have a political fighting, and a lot of politics. For instance, next in 10 days we will have an election for mayors in more than 3,000 cities or municipalities in Bolivia. And this is a problem for my community, which is located in urban area. And this community, I choose this to work in this community because about 10 years ago, we had a slide, how do you say, landslide?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, the neighbor
Landslide?
is going, landslide is going down. About 2,000 families lost their homes, and from that 2,000, this neighborhood, which is Villa Esperanza, something like New Hope, this community, they are 62 homes, 62 families, and we are starting, but from 10 years ago at least, starting to build new neighborhood. And according to these articles, I need to help with my ideas getting from this course. And this is my news, my opinions from La Paz City, but I need to work with 2 communities. It's one community is for your course, and another is for Dr. Taylor's community. And my question is, can I work in the same community, or I need to choose to another different community?
So you can choose this, you can work in the same community for this course and the other course, absolutely. You don't need to create or look for two different groups that you belong to. You can certainly use both or the same community for both courses.
Oh, okay. Okay, thank you.
Uh-huh. Which I love your example though, because I think in terms of the question of doing good by your community, one, you want to use your community for this course to grow your own learning and the other course too. But it also, in terms of doing good by your community, the first thing that I heard too was you need to help the community in what ways that you can, which may include this course and Daniel's course. So even
Okay,
if it's
thank you.
hands-on asking questions, that is doing good by your community. Thank you for sharing and your questions. Other folks, what does doing good by your community mean?
I think part of it is helping how you can, but also being mindful of the impact or the side effects of the work you're doing. I think one example in the social enterprise space that has gotten some attention is Tom's Shoes. So they do the one-for-one model, and they bring shoes to developing countries and rural areas. But there's been some backlash because they're decimating industries where people have made a living selling shoes.
Right.
And so I think doing good also means that you're mindful of what other impacts you're having beyond maybe what you initially anticipated and responding to those.
Thank you for that example. I think too, and maybe some of you all can respond to this as well. We also mean well, right? When we think of doing good by our community, many of us mean well, but in our approaches or our language, or even in the context of history, I think of just specifically with the United States in this past year, that context has changed for a lot of us that do recognize differences, that know that things have not been great, want to do well, but the we watch the way we do it because we recognize from certain places some of us have more power or privilege to do things as opposed to others that may not. So that doing good by our community has a lot more weight, I think, globally just as well as locally. But thank you for that example. I love Tom's Shoes, and yet I'm like, something has to be not right with some of this. And the model may not be the best for some places. Other folks, what does doing good by your community mean? Anybody want to share?
For me, a bit still confusing because as an NGO worker, we sometimes use even the term "our community" is that is our kind of target community, but we used to use our community. So we work for our community, but actually we're not belong to that community, but we're helping them. So our community is, can say, our organization is our own the community, but we work for the community people. So we think we're doing something good for our target community, but it's not for our, that
right.
confusion is still, yeah.
And I think it's hard whenever we think, did you want to say something to that, Grace? You've read?
No, I was just responding to Casey's comment.
Oh,
But
gotcha.
I'm listening to y'all as well.
I was getting ready to ask the same question based off of what June just said about mission work. And I don't want to weigh in with my opinion too much there before you all have a chance to discuss and share. But we want to do good by a community as opposed to our community in that perspective. I wonder if that changes for some of you when we talk about mission work or traveling somewhere else to do good by a community, not necessarily always our community.
I feel like some of us have experience doing that as Peace Corps members. Like,
Right.
it was always really weird because, like, you have, like, I was in the specifically community and youth development sector. And so, like, my purpose at the school was to help create programs to, like, help out with development and such. And that's what I wanted to do. And so I ended up, my last project before I left was grant writing. And I wanted to do good by the community and help do something with the space, like a lot that was like right outside of the school. And we were talking about things that we could put there as far as like, that was like feasible by the standards of like what the grant like needed. But then the director was like, oh, no, we're gonna have 2 tennis courts, the pool's over there. We want
Yes.
bleachers over here and here. We also want a soccer field too. And then like a little patio area where people can exercise. And I'm like, wait, what?
Is that what they really need?
And that's what I was trying to explain. Like we're already like really working hard for the whole like need basis type of thing where like, okay, we need to clean this up because it's kind of a hazard. It's just like a field with like farming equipment. We need to do something with that and move it out the way. We could try to get some type of program and say that like in order to have the program, we need to clean that space up and get a grant to clean the space up and have the community do it. And they're like, yeah, but we really just want a swimming pool. I'm like, we're in a landlocked country. No one in this country swims. They don't know why you need a swimming pool. So like I wanted to do good by the community, but like
Wow.
that's why it was really interesting to look at the what was it, like the interior versus exterior and the individual and collective, because like you're looking at like I guess rituals over there and then also like culture over there and like internal and external like motivations.
And is tennis part of that? That is so many things. Wow.
Yeah, of course I'm the American, so we can do literally anything.
Yeah, that's why I have
that's how
the American perspective is a very domineering one, and those of us that want to serve, want to help communities based on their need, not our need to feel better about ourselves versus give what we can in terms of time and talent and treasure for a community to build itself as opposed to what we think it should be. Like you mentioned, the swimming pool, versus the need for a cleaner environment and a safe environment. Carlene, you were going to say something?
Yeah, I also found myself thinking about my Peace Corps experience and the idea of what does the community I'm living in need versus what does Peace Corps ask of me, and a lot of the reportables and the measurable outcomes that Peace Corps wanted and needed for their programming versus what my community would have actually benefited from. And I think that there was often conflict there. And so thinking about how I could give my community what they needed and wanted and were asking for, and meet the things that, you know, my Peace Corps community was asking of me.
It's a very hard balance. Especially when and please anybody pipe up to disagree, but the American perspective is, well, we can help everybody. And this is how it works in the US. And that's how it should work for everybody else. And that is definitely, definitely not true. But I think those of us that have to and want to work in communities outside the US, we carry that very incorrect perspective with us and try not to step on the toes of our local community and understanding what they need. And I would love to hear an international perspective on a lot of this outside of several of us, or even how annoying it is.
I will say there was an incident, and yes, an incident that occurred. Somebody had a great idea. It was a great idea because the area that I lived in Automobile, was like super duper sunny. And so there's a lot of sun. And so someone decided to capitalize on this and put solar panels on top of the school. Great idea. But the local community that installed the solar panels did not know how to install them correctly. And so they fell through the roof of the school and destroyed several classrooms. Thank goodness the school was closed at the time, but it destroyed
Wow.
several classrooms. so, um, so then they tried to apply for a grant to fix the classrooms, and it just got really ugly. So
Wow.
like, we see you guys need this thing, and you guys need to be or to, use this great technology that we have in America, and it's great and it'll work for you. And then you just slap it on a school roof and then call it a day. And
Yeah. When they probably should have been on the ground where they would have made a little bit less
or
of
you,
a,
yeah, I
or
don't,
put them somewhere else. Wow.
yeah.
And thank you, Dan. Yes, most top-down development plans usually face interest conflict between community and the development grants. Exactly. That's why I appreciate a lot of the perspectives of seed scale that Daniel talks about. And I honestly, I pick and choose pieces of seed scale instead of just in its total, of things being community led, change being led from the assets that the community holds instead of outside sources coming in and saying, well, we'll give you this money or we'll give you this resource if you do it this way. And that may be completely out of context or need for the community. Just infuriating. Fabienne?
Yes, one thing I would like to add about what you say, that the United States have in mind that they could help the world, but it's not true. It's like I can see in my work that when you come with your hands full, that is increase like inferiority with your partner, when it's in a poor country like my country, Haiti. And one thing that I experienced with a church from the US is like I they were in to explain that you can have you can have system, you can what to do is like to help people be part of the decision. I know that they need water source and they can wait to collect rainwater. They can have the water source and I don't know if I don't know the word in English, but they make it in a way that they use a water that they have and they bring it to the community. I think that one of the things that gonna be very, very good for us in Haiti, because we receive a lot of NGO, we receive a lot of money, but the problem remain the same. And I think that the seed scale approach gonna be very, very good for us, because I think even if you are a leader, even if you got the money, it's very, very important to learn about the community or the people you want to help, and to make them part of the decision you want to take.
Yeah, thank you. And you broke up a little bit at the beginning, but I think you mentioned like inequality with that as well. And I think as part of that.
One thing I mentioned inequality because when you I see that when people come with the money, folks or community think that, okay, because they have money, they are superior. If you
Right.
if you come with like a friendship instead of let's say a friendship instead of a partnership, that make that create better relationship and make things easier.
Mhm. Yeah, the inequality and the superiority complex definitely makes the work much more difficult when somebody is writing the check, but saying, well, you should use it this way. That's not the best way for that community. Very, very frustrating. And it's, yeah, the outsider perspective. It's like, well, I see all these things wrong and I can help do this. Well, that's only from a perspective of having the ability to see from outside and saying something is incorrect or not done right, or this is how we would do it, you know, with this money. So if we give you this money, you have to do it this way.
Yes.
Very frustrating. But let's move on to the next question, see if it's a little less frustrating for folks. Do you think it's possible to have financial success while having social success? So watching the bottom line while watching out for your community. And that question is more so asked from financial success as a organization, so business, nonprofit, but maybe also individual, of you being paid a living, right? Is it possible to have financial success while having social success? So Matt's nodding his head yes.
I think it definitely does. And I think it's somewhat of a disservice to think that it couldn't. And I think they could potentially breed each other, but especially that social success breeding financial success. And yeah, that's what I think.
Thank you. Other
I
perspectives.
think it's possible, and I think according to the second article we read, they really wanted to like push that and say like, yes, and these are all the ways you can do it. I think that in practice, especially in my community, it's not really happening. And I guess like that's something we can look at, like why.
Mm-hmm.
But it kind of just feels like we're always struggling to be successful in one or the other, and rarely even depending on your definition of success, it's just like we're always like scrambling for the next thing.
Right.
That's my perspective.
Yeah. And the definition of financial success very much depends on the context, but also the person, right? So to me, like financial success might be defined as I can pay my bills, I can maybe save a little for retirement or emergency funds. I can go to school or pay for a little extra things, but not like a Warren Buffett or who's the dude that owns Virgin Atlantic? Branson. Yeah. Where somebody is a billionaire. Some people would consider that's financial success, where some of us are like, you know what, I would just kind of like to be debt free, maybe own my house, or, you know, have have a, apartment even that I actually can pay the rent for and actually eat. That's kind of the standard here. So financial success is a very broad range, but then so is social success. Do any of those things mean something different for you, June?
That for the definition, but I want to share one. We're operating the enterprise in Malay to helping the farmer, especially some the poor farmer who has no the bargain power. So whenever the issue in Malay is farmer, I mean farmer cannot find the better or proper market. The vendor they cheat, even they cheat weight when they weigh, they cheat it, and even price it. They hold it. I mean, the market, the farmer have very limited resource, I mean, information. So the vendor is easy to cheat, and the farmer usually they desperate the cashing. So we established the social enterprise. So our main target is, I mean, main strategy is just 10%. I mean, yeah, 10% higher the price than the vendor. So what happened? And still, we're not the offer very low price. We still keep the profit. We still make it a profit. Need to target the profit making. So we're not offer very low prices. Still, we're making survive. But what happened is the farmer side, they really happy to come to us to sell their the product because they're higher price. And the interesting is not only the poor helping the poor farmer, but we want to create an environment, a healthy environmental market. So what happened is the vendor who usually cheat, they increase their price, and even they a bit avoid the cheating when they win. So I think it's kind of, I mean, social the impact, and at the same time the finance impacting as well.
Thanks for sharing that example. Yeah, competitive pricing versus pricing that intentionally undersells a farmer, provider, product producer, levels on the question of fairness, right? Just basic, I'm being fair in what I pay, and you're being fair in that you are making some money on something you produce. That to most people is a basic economic equation there. I'm going to pay you what I think, the price that you ask, or I'll haggle with you if there's something, if there's some room there, but I'm going to price this that at least covers at bare minimum my cost, and maybe a little then some, to have financial success. And really, I think in a lot of different contexts begs the question of what is that then above the bare minimum of what I've put into costs that is competitive and fair in the market, as opposed to gouging, right? Pricing something to the point where it's unaffordable to everyone else, or people are like staples, going to have to make a hard choice and say, well, I need this, not that I want this, I need this. So if somebody's charging 3 times as much as what it would normally cost, I may make the hard decision of, yeah, I'll buy this, but make cuts somewhere else. And so then I think we're then reducing social success when we do something like that, right? So I might have financial success by charging more for something that is not a competitive price, that is above what people are willing usually to pay. But what I've done then is taken away from some societal success there. someone has had to maybe make the choice between buying what I'm selling. So let's say even a loaf of bread and a dozen eggs. Let's say I've made the price 3 times what it normally is, and somebody needs, that's a basic staple of food, right? And I've made it 3 times the cost, then someone who needs that pays it, but then is saying, well, maybe that means my kids aren't getting to enjoy something, or we don't pay for medicine, or we don't visit the doctor, or we don't make a trip that we needed to for like vital reasons, like doctor or family, what have you. So making that difficult choice. Daniel shared from a business perspective, transactions seem exploitive. Yes, that's exactly, thank you for summing all of that up into one word, exploitative, that benefit few and disfavor majority. Example, export, especially for Daniel's country, Ethiopian coffee and Starbucks. So that's why I think a lot of us recognize the social success of buying something that's either made locally or is fair trade, when we know farmers are being compensated fairly according to a certain standard, right? That's why we pay for things that say fair trade, not because they're cheaper, but knowing that it contributes to the financial success and the social success of a community. Or does anybody want to contribute to that? Tell me I'm wrong. Have a different perspective on that.
I think that's spot on. And I also just wanted to share another organization or potential resource. I worked in the social enterprise, social venture space for about a year when I was at Vanderbilt. And there's an organization called HALT Prize that encourages students from around the world to really think about how can we create these businesses, and they are talking about businesses that can have a social impact and not be exploitative. How can we have businesses that are going to serve our community, but also sustain themselves? And if you're interested in reading about some of the businesses that they've helped to fund and start, and maybe how, if you or your organization has an idea how you could get involved, I'll post the link in the chat.
Thanks, Carlene. Yeah, so in that is a lot of that HALT. I was writing down help. Sorry, thank you.
Yes.
Social enterprise is what I think really does come to mind when we ask this question of financial success and social success, not financial versus social. And so I'll give also an example. Again, it is from an American perspective, but in the local community, and I say local, like where my hometown is before I moved to Ohio. So down in Kentucky, specifically in Lexington, our 3 largest employers, that was the hospital system, so several different hospitals, the university, and the city, like city government. All 3 of them at the same time, based off of one bad large experience at the university, decided that they were no longer going to hire anybody with a felony record. So a pretty substantial legal charge when you've committed a felony. For example, this one person stole $25,000, if you want to convert that to your local currency, in computer equipment. So based off this one really bad experience, all 3 of those major systems decided to not hire someone with that kind of criminal record. That left a lot of individuals, so specifically the women that I was working with who have been overcoming substance use disorder. So if you think opiates, if you think methamphetamines, if you think prescription drug use, that's kind of what these women were experiencing. They could not, after coming out of recovery, being drug-free, find a position that was making a livable wage. They would only qualify for certain jobs. And so based off of that, a friend of mine recognized, okay, these women need decent paying jobs above minimum wage, and we can do something about this. They're willing to work. They're willing, they want to build up a job history here. So we created a catering company that was competitive in prices. We weren't undercutting any major catering businesses, to hire these women at minimum part-time, usually about 30 hours, to be able to work, paying them above minimum wage. I think we were paying between $11 and $15 an hour, which just for reference, minimum wage has been hovering around $7.25. It should be, according to inflation, $9 an hour, but I digress. So giving them work for a decent, I mean, is that enough? It depends on your, again, definition of need and financial success, but above what a minimum wage employment was going to provide. When we think about the financial success question, then, was the social enterprise itself making bukus of money? No. But in terms of financial success, we were providing employment for individual women to achieve a little bit more of a piece of financial success for themselves, while also kind of tackling a social problem of women who have criminal histories not being able to gain employment. So that, again, is just one definition of what financial success. Was it a big business making tons of money? No. But it was providing jobs that led to financial success of individual women. So over 3 years, employed 30 women, part to full time, plus provided job skills to about 200 or so over 3 years. So, think about how you define financial success and social success when you're working on some of these efforts. Thistle Farms, the Jordan River Foundation in Amman is another great one as an example. Herman mentions or plays off of the Ethiopian coffee. Austin made a comment, oftentimes it comes from a choice of short-term gain at the cost of long-term community growth. Absolutely. My husband and I get into many conversations as to why billionaires donate and why they give to community when and especially like corporate social responsibility. I think there's a lot there to debate as to the benefit of corporate social responsibility. Like Procter & Gamble, my brother-in-law, in full transparency, works for Procter & Gamble, but in some of their efforts have chosen to focus on women, and particularly women outside the US, and water. Two basic kind of issues of communities not having clean water. We know this is a need, right? But then you've got a major, massive conglomerate, Procter & Gamble, coming in and saying, well, we'll help take care of this problem. Question is, how are they doing that at a community level? And actually, I don't know the full answer to that. I'm kind of curious now. So anyway, I digress. If we go back to our questions, we've got 7 minutes left here. Based on your knowledge of your community, the needs, problems that exist, how would you write a goal or part of a goal, if you want to just share some thoughts here, for your organization based off of this playbook article, this idea of financial success and social success living in together in a space? Would there be a goal that you had for your organization to achieve both? I think there was even kind of an example in the article that provided, yes, setting goals. The company in Bangladesh, and also talking about drinking water. 2 goals: to provide safe, affordable drinking water to the inhabitants of the rural villages of, and I'll mispronounce it, I apologize, Golmari and Padua over the long term, and to sustain operations from sales without relying on grants.
Just by a quick perspective, I want to share. We, as an NGO, we try to the target to social aspect and the finance, as I said as well. But one of the biggest challenges was we may confuse the community. The one hand, you're good doing, even our organization name is something make them confused. Our organization name is Good Neighbors. So you're good neighbors. You're doing charity things, and you bring another way. You said emphasize is a business model. So you is a loan revolving model and the like. Then you, it seems you bring two different ideas. But this is anyway. So as your NGO bring two different concepts might confuse them. Even the article said better, sometimes it's better to launch different, a separate institute to dealing with the finance issues. So that we have faced that problem. So that's why we trying to stop as an NGO to provide the income activity, but instead some community kind of a small growing bank, community basis. So the angel part to just focus on training and governancing and some other party, but the finance income generation separate these two. That's how we taking the strategy so far. It's really, for my experience, it's really difficult to bring two at the same time as a one NGO.
Thanks for sharing. Matt, I think you had a comment. I thought you came off mute.
Oh, I don't know where I'm at with it. I'm trying to get wrap my head around. I'm wondering if, at least in the States, if we've gotten to the point in which capitalism holds so much power that this is like a damn near impossible thing to accomplish. I think for the nonprofit I work for is geared towards education and low income youth, of which they don't pay anything to be a part of the program, and then at the end they're awarded a $10,000 scholarship to spend on education, and that's all fundraised through grants and donors. But that couldn't be done without the people with money giving it to the organization. So I'm just sitting here wondering if I often think about what it would mean to get rid of capitalism, at least for the United States, and it's really hard to think about and what that future would look like. I don't know if this answers the question or not, but I feel like the nonprofit I'm working with now is close to what it could look like. I don't know.
Or at least answering that goal or that question and creating goals for themselves in the context that they find themselves in. Is it single-handedly going to do away with capitalism? We know we have to live within it. Or in some aspects, maybe we use it to our advantage and get what we need from it to accomplish a social goal.
Yeah. Well, I just wonder, is it then creating this like ongoing dependency of depending on the money? I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's very cyclical with nonprofits or even small businesses and saying, well, this is what I'm trying to accomplish. So yes, I know I need donors. They donate in part because we have a great mission, but they also donate in part sometimes from their own guilt from having money. That's only part of it. Greg, my husband, would argue that people donate because they feel guilty and they want to feel better about themselves. Is it bad for us to take that money then because somebody doesn't feel good about themselves and is donating because they want to feel better? We buy, to the example of Tom's shoes, because we want to feel better about ourselves, that we're buying a pair of shoes that we want, and it's providing a pair of shoes that someone else needs. So you know, rather than sometimes tackling this greater perspective of like, we know there are faults in some of these mechanisms. We know that there are faults in capitalism, but we also know that there are plenty of faults in other ways of raising money or operations. But if we take the perspective of it's a tool and I can use parts of it for good and or, you know, so financial success and or and social success, if we're trying to achieve both. If I use something as a tool, is that bad?
Mm.
I ask that question of a lot of things. I use my education as a tool, not necessarily because it was financially successful, but I've paid for it, or I'm going to be paying for it, so I'm going to use it as a tool. Is sometimes that tool to intimidate somebody and giving me an answer or doing something for me. If I mention, hey, I'm Dr. Erica Harney, I need this done, to somebody who knows no different than I am not a medical doctor, it's a tool to get a result. Capitalism is a tool for a result. If I need to use a sales model to get a result, to sell a product, to better my community, is that bad? So think of things as tools. Like, Ivy, I think you use your job right now as a tool.
That is true. I was gonna say, there are a lot of companies that have similar models where like they are benefiting a community or a group. Like I don't know if you guys have tried Dave's Killer Bread, but it's really good bread. And it's actually started by an ex-con, and he also employs like predominantly people who have come through the prison system. Also, I know I used to work as a prep chef, and a lot of the individuals in back of house were like, they had done some type of like time somewhere and had like, it's like the only places that will like hire you.
Yep.
And so like, if you are able, I feel like if you are able to, because you guys are talking about like, sometimes people feel guilty about having money and those types of things. And I see no problem with taking that money to do something good, especially because
Right.
sometimes people just want to feel good. And so
Right.
like for me, if I can afford to spend $6 on a loaf of bread, that is amazing and can help
Right.
support ex-cons and felons, I will spend that money on that bread, and
Right.
I'll buy the fancy Toms that will also go with parachutes to
Right.
someone else. So I mean,
We buy
that
on
kind of
social benefit.
justified, I feel. Yeah.
So a lot of great stuff. We're already over time. I feel like we could probably talk for another hour on some of these issues with plenty of examples. But thank you all for sharing the examples that you have and the conversation and answering these questions. And I look forward to seeing you all back here in a week. Digest. Have a good digestion of all this this conversation. Thank you all.
Thanks. We have a lot to think about.
Yeah, a lot to think about.
Thanks, Erica.
Bye, y'all.
Yep, thanks. Bye.
See you later, guys.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you, Fabienne. Thank you, Herman. Good
Thank
evening,
you.
Dorji.
Bye
Good
bye.
evening.
Bye.